There's a detail about Viking daily life that rarely makes it into popular documentaries or classroom retellings. We hear about the raids, the longships, the sagas, but not the quiet ingenuity that let these people survive brutal northern winters long before insulation, stoves, or modern carpentry existed. For the next minute, hold on to that sense of curiosity that history buffs know well, the kind that comes when you realize ancient people solve problems we still struggle with today. Viking homes often stayed warm even when the hearth fire burned low or went out entirely. Travellers and later chroniclers wrote about how comfortable some longhouses felt despite the icy climate. This wasn't magic, and it wasn't luck. It was a structural trick built right into the earth beneath their feet. Once you understand it, you begin to appreciate that the Vikings weren't just warriors. They were master problem solvers and engineers of the everyday world. The Viking floor method starts with understanding the ground itself. Viking homes were built low and long, and unlike many European cultures of the same era, they didn't place floors directly on cold stone or exposed earth. Instead, they used a layered floor system that trapped insulation and harnessed the natural thermal stability of the soil. Archaeological digs across Scandinavia, Iceland and Greenland reveal the same principle repeated. The floor wasn't a single surface, but a combination of packed earth, straw, brush and sometimes wooden planks placed strategically above those layers. This created both insulation and thermal mass. The earth naturally holds steady temperatures year-round, so the goal was to create a barrier that slowed heat escape while still allowing the mild warmth of the ground to rise gently. The key to the method was the multi-layer system. Vikings would begin with a base layer of compacted soil. On top of that, they placed straw or dried grasses mixed with brush or reeds. This organic layer trapped air pockets, tiny insulation chambers that modern builders still use in wool-based materials. Over that, depending on region and available resources, they placed either wooden planks or another layer of tightly packed fine soil that had been sifted to reduce drafts. In some Icelandic longhouses, turf blocks were added as well. Turf, with its dense root structure, acts as a natural insulator and slowly releases retained warmth. The combination of layers prevented heat loss from above while buffering the bitter cold of wintered ground below. What made this method effective wasn't just insulation. It was actually the way the layered floor system stored and released heat. A hearth fire, even a modest one, would warm the packed floor over time. Once the fire died, the floor continued radiating warmth upward for hours. This is basically the same concept behind modern heated floors, except the Vikings achieved it without pipes or electricity. The straw and brush trapped heat, the packed earth stored it, and the top layer radiated it back into the living space. It became a passive heating method that required no maintenance once built. Even body heat from several occupants contributed to warming the thermal mass, making longhouses far more comfortable than their stone-built contemporaries elsewhere in Europe. One of the biggest problems in cold climates is not just temperature, but, dampness. Cold, wet floors pull heat from the body much faster than dry ones. The Vikings solved this by ensuring their floors could breathe. The straw and brush layers allowed moisture to move through instead of being trapped. Pack horses and livestock often shared portions of a long house, and their body heat further dried the floor layers. This prevented mould, reduced cold drafts, and kept the interior dry enough that heat wasn't lost to evaporation. Again, this technique mirrors the natural building knowledge seen across ancient cultures, where moisture control was as important as temperature control. For those interested in survival structures, off-grid cabins, or even backyard historical experiments, the Viking floor method is, honestly, surprisingly practical. Start with bare ground and compact it firmly. Next, add a layer of dried grass, straw, or reed-like material. The layer should be thick enough to provide insulation, but not so deep that it collapses under weight. Usually a few inches of compressed material works well. On top, place either wooden planks or a layer of fine packed soil. In a primitive shelter or emergency situation, even turf chunks can serve as a top layer if they're cut with the root mass intact. Once the structure is warmed by a small fire or even just body heat, the floor will begin storing that warmth. Campers often notice this effect when they pack pine needles under their sleeping area. The Vikings simply formalized the method. For those constructing an off-grid cabin in cold regions, a modern interpretation might include a tamped earth base, a layer of clean straw, and then reclaimed planks on top. Builders wanting to stay aligned with historical authenticity can even replicate the turf method by cutting sod blocks. Over time, as the organic material compresses, the insulation improves, while the ground temperature stabilizes the interior. This technique works especially well in earthen floor workshops, root cellars, and small huts where traditional flooring is just too costly or, honestly, unnecessary. What makes this method so enduring is its blend of practicality and efficiency. The Viking floor trick didn't rely on rare resources, expensive materials, or, complex design. It worked because it used what the land provided and because it made sense within the environmental challenges the Vikings faced. Their understanding of soil organic fibre and heat retention shows a level of environmental engineering that really deserves recognition alongside their shipbuilding skills. It was a system built to last, to keep families alive, and to ensure that life in the north was survivable even during harsh winters. Thank you for joining us on In the Beginning. If this guide brought you value, subscribe, share it with fellow history enthusiasts, and help us keep exploring the ancient knowledge that shaped how people lived and survived long before us.